So hi, this is a vlog and the goal is to continue working on my sci-fi horror? That's what it is. My sci-fi horror novel. My sci-fi horror book? I don't know what I've been calling it. Oh my gosh, but it's ongoing. I've reached 50,000 words, which is really exciting. I think there's probably about 15,000 more words in here, maybe 20,000, but I think that's pushing it. I think a lot of my edits on this are going to be like going more in depth on certain points. So I think it will probably lengthen during the edits. So like 70,000 words is pretty good, or like even 65,000 I would be pretty pleased with. This is just a thing. But I've been very motivated to write over the past couple of like months, and it's one of the things I do as like a way to deal with stress and usually when that happens there's like a dip, like at some point the desire to do stuff dips, or like the need to like write dips a little bit. It's just part of how it works for me. I get like up times and down times, and I think I'm in one of those down times right now, which I am totally okay with. Usually when I get in these points, I usually try to write like a sentence a day. That's like my goal. And so that's where I'm at right now. I'm just trying to write like at least a sentence a day, just to like, not necessarily to write. I mean, every word I write I expect to kind of delete. When I was younger, the way I convinced myself to like start books and to keep writing was telling myself that I was going to be deleting the first like chapter. Or if not the first chapter, then the first paragraph or the first sentence. Like whatever I first write is always on the chopping block. So that's sort of when I start doing like a single sentence at a time. It's not always a good sentence, but I do it, and there's always this expectation that if I don't like it or I don't like the way I'm going, I can just delete it. So that's nice. But the scene that I'm on is actually really cool. When I was at the beginning of this book, I was very much like, oh my gosh, this feels way more like an eerie thriller than it does in horror. But now that I'm at this point, I'm like, yeah, this is a horror. So it's really fun. I've realized that I really love describing like horrible things. Like right now something terrible is happening to one of the main characters, or one of the side characters I guess, but he's like a very important part of this book, and something really awful is happening to him. It's not like gory in the way that you would like expect gore to be, because there's like no actual blood or anything like that, though there is throughout like the book, because it's like a horror. There's gonna be some of that, but I really love body horror. It has to do with me being sick when I was younger. My body became very divorced from my sense of self. Part of the reason why I love Junji Ito is he does so much body horror. Like people turning into spirals and like contorting their body. But anyways, we're doing one of those scenes, and one of the things I realized based off of the last like horror short story I wrote was that a lot of times when I'm writing these really intense, like visually intense scenes where things are happening and it's really spooky, I often forget about the main character. This is terrifying. Look at it. But yeah, the main character has to react to it in some way in order for people to feel like they're a part of the whole thing. And I've realized that I just don't do that because I rely on the reader to feel this sort of like intense, you know, feelings about it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the scene. I'm kind of like lazily writing it. Maybe I'll write some more. I don't know. I'm trying to listen to where I'm at like emotionally. But I will definitely have written before I record again. So we'll see. I hope it goes well. I'm really pleased with where it's at. I feel like I understand the emotional core of the story a lot better now than I did in the beginning, which is always really nice. And it makes it so it's a lot easier for me to kind of engage in that going forward, and so I'm really glad. But anyways, I'm going to head off and do some more, and I hope you have a great couple minutes. Hello. So I've been making progress, but like really slow progress. It's been like rough. I've been writing maybe like a sentence or two a day, which I'm pleased with. Like, I'm glad I'm doing that. It keeps me in the mind of actually like writing, so I don't like forget everything, which is really helpful for me. So I've been struggling, and I've been thinking about this, and this is part of why I wanted to do like a like a recording, like chat a little bit, is I've been thinking about it and I've realized that like, what have I realized? Oh my goodness. But I've realized that when I was writing Project Underground, I had issues around this exact same part of the book. It's like the point before the actual main climax of the book, but it's like the build up to it, but kind of not the build up. It's like the thing that happens before then, right? And I think part of the reason is because there is like so much of their emotional arc has to be like come together here, and so much of like what I've been building throughout the story has to come together here and like consolidate. And so it always feels like every sentence I write, I'm like, am I doing that? Am I tying in the strands well enough that if I come back and edit it, I'll understand what's going on? Because that's the point, right? I need to make sure I understand what's going on well enough that when I edit it, I can actually edit it properly. So that's what's going on. And I think it's really interesting that I always have issues around this part, because it's like when I get to the climax, I think that goes faster. We'll see. I'm interested to see how it will turn out with this. I made notes to edit this one part of it because I've realized it's not quite what I want it to be. And I think there's going to be a lot of editing of the main antagonist for this. I'm a little worried that they're not coming across as like spooky as they should be. That's something that I'm really going to have to consider as we go through it, but we're not doing that now. But anyways, I'm like struggling a bit, which is okay. It's like part of the process, right? And it's really interesting because I remember when I was struggling in this part with the underground, and it was like, I remember reading it back and it was like one of my favorite parts. So I'm really curious if it's gonna be like the same thing with this, or if I'm like pushing through more of this, because I really don't feel like rewriting scenes, even though I probably should be. I really don't feel like it right now. I also think the issues I'm running into are not like the same sort of issues. The issues I was running into with Project Underground was like, I need to get the emotions correct, because the emotions are what really were like driving the story at that point. Well, other stuff too, but like I needed to make sure that the emotions were correct, because that leads into like the main character's character arc, and like it leads to something. Whereas here, the things I want to change are more like actions and details, whereas like all the emotions and all the feelings are very clear to me. And even though this is like honestly a really complicated character arc, like it's really complicated, and it's like there's so much tugs and like pulling on like both sides of it, and it's just like there's so many different aspects that are pushing her in different directions, and it's really interesting. But because it's so complicated, I think I've been paying a lot of attention to it, whereas I didn't with Project Underground. And I was really confused in Project Underground about the actual main plot, which meant I spent more time on it. So that was like better in the first draft, more prepared in the first draft. Because I was confused about it, I spent more time, which is usually what happens to me. If I feel like I'm bad at like a specific map in a game, I focus really hard on getting better at that map until that map is like my best map. I think that's a similar thing that's happening here. I'm gonna write a bit more today, but I'll give you updates whenever I have like real updates to give, so. Okay, this is inevitable. But anyways, I returned. So I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts in general. So I'm getting to like the end of this book and I'm finding it really difficult. And I was like trying to figure out why I was finding it difficult, because it's not like the writing itself has gotten harder, but some of my thoughts around the writing have gotten more difficult, which is always a little bit sad. And I still enjoy the writing process, which is good. As I'm getting closer to the end, I'm getting a lot of like nerve. Like it's scary getting to the end of a project, you know? It's like there's all these questions of like, am I gonna be able to fix the issues? There's all of these like fears and worries. Even if I finish it, like it's just never gonna be good. And I think it's like this feeling of like when I'm still writing, it's just like an unfinished, right? Like it's just like in my brain, it's just silly, it's just fun. I'm not really thinking about it. But as soon as it's done, as soon as it's complete, it feels like suddenly it has to be good, right? Like suddenly it has to actually be something, which is so silly. First off, it doesn't have to be good now. It doesn't have to be good ever. But even if I go through it and like I edit it and I can't get it to a point that I want it to be at, like that process will have been helpful. It'll have been such a good learning experience. I'm gonna like try new things. I'm gonna run into new problems and new issues. And I'm gonna get to learn more. And that's like just valuable, you know? Even if the project itself is like not something I want to continue or it fails for whatever reason, like doing it, writing it, editing it is such a great like learning experience. It's such a wonderful thing to do, you know? And I know as soon as I start editing it, I'll feel better about it. And as soon as I finish, I'll feel better about it. But right now I'm in that point where it's like right before the like final climax bit. And like the final climax bit will probably go by quickly because it's like I'll be really invested in the story. At least that's what I'm expecting, but it might not go that way. I don't know. I've been having a lot of thoughts. But I spent like last night basically just like daydreaming about this and like daydreaming about what I want to happen, about like things that I would change and build up to. Basically daydreaming about edits. And just daydreaming about what was gonna happen next and like all these things, because that always helps me like remotivate myself, because it gets me really excited for the project again. It gets me out of my head so I'm not like so concerned about how it's going to appear, and just start thinking about how it's going to feel to write it. And you know, and that's really lovely because I'm very excited to write it again, which is good. Yay. I'm actually on a really fun scene, so I'm like itching to get back to it, but I'm not going to be able to write until this evening, so I will have to write it then, so we'll see. Hello, it's been a while. I haven't actually recorded because my dog got sick and I was like overcome with worry and concern and I was just not functioning, so like I did not do anything. Yeah, she's still a little sick, but she's getting better, so thank goodness. But yeah, I have returned. It's been a while, but the last time we chatted, I was like stuck a little bit. I remember that. And after we chatted, I actually like almost immediately after we chatted, it was like I went to go write, and like even just talking about the issues that I have and that I run into and like figuring out what the problem is, it helps me so much. Like it helps me so much. So I actually went and I wrote like a whole bunch after that. I got past the part that I was feeling really stuck on, though like the part itself wasn't the part that I was stuck on. It was actually just like my brain was just the part I was stuck on. It wasn't the writing itself. So that's why it was so easy after figuring out what the problem was to get into a flow state. But yeah, I actually typed up all of my writing too, which was nice because I made the decision to like go to bed and like take my phone with me, and then I continued writing on my phone, which was really good. It was really healthy for me, I think, but it was very nice to get to that point. But it's always interesting to me because when I was typing it up, I realized that like my writing in the parts where I was feeling stuck and like uninspired were like not as good as the parts where I was feeling happy. And it's interesting, it's like that for a lot of reasons. It's very much not connected to feeling uninspired, or maybe it is because I was going in the wrong direction. It was entirely because like this is a first draft and I wasn't entirely sure what was gonna happen in those sections of the scenes, and so I was like going into weird places, I was like making weird steps. It was just all over the place a little bit. Which is totally chill. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it was a little bit like off, I guess. I don't know. These are like really poignant scenes, right? Like really important scenes for like the character arc, and like this is the point where the main character has like really big realizations. And when I was writing it, I had like a vague idea what those realizations were, but writing it really kind of showed me that I do not know as much as I think I do. Or like as much as I needed to know at the time. And so I actually, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, okay, so this is how I can fix it. So I had all these ideas for how to make it better, so I typed those all up in my little editing notes document that I have on my Scrivener. And gosh, that thing is getting really long now, but it makes sense, I'm getting towards the end. And so I have so many plans for like editing that and fixing that when I'm done, but I can't edit it yet because if I edit it now, it's like, it's one of those things that's like the emotional arc of the character that I really need to go through the entire book and set it up actually properly. Like now that I know where the character is ending up, I really need to like do the whole like process, and so I'm like not gonna change it. But I have notes for it for when I edit, so yay. But yeah, I'm super excited and I'm really glad I've gotten to this point. I still like, I feel like, okay, I feel like I'm getting really close to the end. Like I'm so close to the end and I don't even know what I'm gonna do about it. Did a brief brainstorm of what was gonna happen next, and it's literally like, let's see, like 4 different things that happen next. There's some brainstorming that needs to happen with like the last scene and like how that will work, but like it's like getting there. It's like getting so close. I was talking to my dad about it. I was like, I think this is gonna be done in like a month or two, and he was like, that doesn't sound that soon. That sounds like a while. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but I have been working on it in and out. I've been working on it. I started it like last year in January 2024, when I was taking a break from the underground. I wrote it for a couple of weeks, and then I went to the underground and did the second draft of edits, or Project Underground. I've been calling it Project Underground. I kind of want to use projects, but I always like get nicknames for my projects, and they're like short versions of what they're actually like called. I'm like, what do I even do next? I mean, I have so many things I want to do, so many projects I want to work on. I had a new idea today for like a sci-fi fantasy, and I was like, I really want to write that because that'll be so fun. But there's like literally not even a little bit of a plot, like not even a little bit. And I think unfortunately that thing is gonna have to wait for a while, because if I want to write it the way that I want to write it, it's gonna end up being like a trilogy, I think, or at least a duology, and I don't really feel like doing that right now. If I were to ever write that, my sci-fi fantasy enemies to lover, like weird, it's gonna be so weird, dude. It's gonna be so weird. But it would be fun. So like, okay, anyways, that was such a tangent. Thanks for hanging out with me. And I'm just so glad. So yay, I feel like reinvigorated, which is really nice. And I think I just also, one thing I really need to do is I just need to lean into my self-indulgence, because at this point in this book, the story, like I'm not going to be able to fix the story without going back and making big developmental edits, which is fun. I like doing that stuff. But I'm not going to be able to fix it now because I'm not going back to edit it until I finish it, because it's just, I'll never finish it if I go back to edit it now. So I'm just going to be really pleased and really self-indulgent and just lean into that, because that's what's gonna help me finish the book and be able to go back and edit. So yay, hopefully I mean, it's probably gonna be a few more vlogs, but hopefully I'll be able to finish it soon, which is really, I'm excited. But anyways, thanks so much for hanging out with me. It's been so nice to see you, and I hope you have had a fun time. I had so much fun making this. I always have so much fun making this. Anyways, bye.